My name is Caleb Renshaw, and I'm 34 years old. For the past 10 years, I've worked as a maintenance supervisor for a mid-sized property management company in Denver, Colorado. It's honest work that pays around $85,000 a year. Not a fortune, but enough to live comfortably and take care of what matters most to me. What matters most is our family's cabin in the Rocky Mountain foothills, about 2 hours west of the city. My grandfather built that place back in 1978 with his own hands, and since I was 18, I've been the one keeping it running. Every few months I drive up there to check the plumbing, test the electrical systems, and make sure everything's secure. Over the years I've upgraded the wiring, installed a modern security system, and even set up a network of discreet surveillance cameras around the property. Nothing fancy, just basic Ring cameras that connect to a central hub I can monitor from my laptop. The cabin sits on 12 acres of pine and aspen trees, completely isolated except for a gravel road that winds through the forest. It's where our family gathers for holidays, birthdays, and summer vacations. It's where I learned to fish with my dad, where my cousins and I spent countless summers, and where I plan to create new memories with Marissa Doyle, my girlfriend of 16 months. Marissa worked as a marketing coordinator for a boutique fitness studio in downtown Denver. She was 31, ambitious, and had this way of lighting up any room she entered. When I first met her at a friend's barbecue in July 2023, she seemed genuinely interested in my stories about maintaining the cabin and preserving family traditions. She called it romantic and old-fashioned, qualities she claimed to admire in a world full of guys who only cared about their next Instagram post. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. In November 2024, I decided it was time to bring Marissa up to the cabin for our annual 5-day Thanksgiving gathering. She'd met my parents a few times in the city, but this would be her first extended time with the extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole crew. I was nervous but excited. The cabin meant everything to me, and I wanted to share that with her. Among the relatives making the trip was my uncle Victor Renshaw, my dad's younger brother. Victor was 57, divorced, and what you'd call successful by any conventional measure. He owned 3 restaurants in Fort Collins, and had recently invested in some real estate ventures that had apparently paid off big. He drove a new BMW X5, wore expensive watches, and never let anyone forget about his latest business triumph or exotic vacation. Victor had always been the family showman, the guy who dominated conversations at dinner with stories about his recent trip to Costa Rica, or his plans to buy a vacation home in Scottsdale. My parents respected his success, and my younger cousins looked up to him like some kind of entrepreneurial guru. Me? I'd always found him a bit much, but family is family. The family started arriving on Wednesday afternoon, November 27th, 2024. My parents drove up first, followed by my Aunt Sarah and her 2 teenage kids. Victor rolled up around 4 p.m. in his BMW, immediately drawing attention as he unloaded expensive bottles of wine and what looked like enough gourmet food to feed an army. "Caleb," he called out, giving me one of those firm handshakes that lasted a beat too long. "This place looks fantastic. You've really outdone yourself with the upkeep." "Just doing what needs to be done," I replied, helping him carry his bags inside. Victor's eyes immediately found Marissa, who was arranging flowers she'd picked from the property in a mason jar. "And you must be the famous Marissa I've heard so much about," he said, switching to that smooth voice he used with waitresses and hotel concierges. "All good things, I hope." Marissa laughed, extending her hand with a smile I'd never seen her use with any of my other relatives. The first 2 days went exactly as expected. We hiked the trails, played cards, and shared stories around the fireplace. Victor regaled everyone with tales of his latest restaurant's grand opening and his plans to expand into the Denver market. Marissa hung on every word, asking follow-up questions about business strategies and profit margins, topics that had never seemed to interest her when I talked about my work. "You know, Marissa," Victor said during dinner Thursday night, "if you ever get tired of the fitness industry, marketing restaurants is where the real money is. I could always use someone with your skills." "That's incredibly generous," she replied, her cheeks slightly flushed. "I'd love to hear more about it. I noticed things throughout Friday that should have set off alarm bells." Marissa volunteering to help Victor prepare his famous stuffing recipe while everyone else watched football. The 2 of them disappearing for what Victor called a business walk to discuss marketing opportunities. Marissa suddenly becoming an expert on restaurant industry trends during our evening conversations. But I trusted her. More than that, I trusted my family. Saturday afternoon, November 30th, I was in the cabin's small office. Really just a converted closet where I kept the network equipment and monitoring systems. I'd been having intermittent Wi-Fi issues all weekend, and I wanted to check if one of the outdoor cameras was interfering with the router. These weren't spy cameras or anything sinister, just basic security equipment I'd installed after we'd had some issues with trespassers a few summers back. I opened my laptop and pulled up the monitoring software. Most of the cameras showed empty rooms and quiet forest scenes. But camera 4, positioned in the corner of the smaller guest bedroom, the room Victor was using, showed something that made my blood freeze in my veins. Marissa was there, with Victor, and they weren't discussing restaurant marketing. I sat there for 30 seconds, maybe longer, watching the screen, watching my girlfriend of 16 months and my uncle, my father's brother, in a situation that left no room for interpretation or innocent explanation. They moved with the comfort of people who'd done this before, who weren't worried about getting caught. My first instinct was to storm into that room and confront them both. My second was to grab Victor by the throat and throw him off the property. But something held me back. Maybe it was the methodical part of my brain that had spent years troubleshooting electrical problems and fixing broken systems. Instead, I saved the video file to my laptop's hard drive. Then I saved it to a USB drive. Then I uploaded it to my personal cloud storage account. I sat in that cramped office for another 10 minutes, listening to the muffled sounds of the family playing board games in the living room, and I made my decision. This betrayal wouldn't be swept under the rug or handled with quiet confrontations and whispered arguments. If Victor and Marissa wanted to disrespect me and my family in the place that meant everything to me, they'd face the consequences in front of everyone who mattered. The dinner plan for Saturday night was ambitious. A full traditional spread that my mom had been coordinating all weekend. Turkey, ham, stuffing, 3 different potato dishes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, and pies. Victor had volunteered to carve the turkey, positioning himself at the head of the table, like the patriarch he'd always imagined himself to be. I spent the rest of Saturday afternoon acting normal. I helped set up tables, tested the sound system we used for family toasts, and even complimented Victor on his wine selection. Marissa seemed relaxed and happy, occasionally catching my eye and smiling the way she had during our first few months together. "This is perfect, baby," she whispered to me while we arranged chairs around the extended dining table. "Your family is wonderful, and this place is like something out of a magazine." "I'm glad you like it," I said, giving her a kiss on the forehead. "Tonight's gonna be memorable." Around 6 p.m., as everyone gathered in the living room for pre-dinner drinks, I made my excuse about checking the cabin's entertainment system. The main TV was a 65-inch Samsung Smart TV I'd installed 3 years ago. Connected to both cable and a media center I used to play family videos during gatherings. I connected my laptop to the TV via HDMI cable and queued up the video file, making sure the audio was properly configured. Then I rejoined the family, accepting a glass of Victor's expensive Cabernet and waiting for the perfect moment. Dinner started at 7:30, and for the first hour everything felt normal. Victor carved the turkey with theatrical precision, making jokes about his surgical technique, while my Aunt Sarah documented everything with her iPhone. Marissa complimented my mom's stuffing recipe and asked for the family secret. Nutmeg and sage apparently passed down from my great-grandmother. "Caleb," my dad said, raising his wine glass, "we need to toast you for keeping this place running. Every year, it gets better." "To Caleb," Victor chimed in, lifting his glass with what I now recognized as practiced insincerity. The backbone of the Renshaw family operation. Marissa squeezed my hand under the table. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. I smiled and accepted the praise, watching Victor's performance with new clarity. He'd always been good at playing the generous patriarch, the successful uncle who lifted everyone up. But now I saw it differently. The way he commanded attention, the way he made everything about his achievements, his generosity. his larger-than-life personality. Around 8:45, after we'd finished the main course and my cousins had started clearing plates, I stood up from my chair. "Before we move on to dessert," I said, keeping my voice level and casual, "I wanted to share something with everyone. A little family entertainment." My mom looked curious. "What kind of entertainment, honey?" "Just some footage I captured this weekend," I replied, walking toward the entertainment center. Sometimes it's interesting to see our family gatherings from a different perspective. I picked up the TV remote and switched the input from cable to HDMI. My laptop screen appeared on the 65-inch display, showing my desktop wallpaper, a photo of the cabin covered in snow from the previous winter. "Caleb, what are you doing?" Marissa asked, and I caught something in her voice. Not curiosity, but concern. "Just sharing some memories," I said, double-clicking on the video file. Victor, who'd been reaching for the wine bottle, suddenly went very still. "Maybe we should stick to dessert and save the home movies for tomorrow," he suggested. But it was too late. The video began playing on the screen, crystal clear in 1080p resolution. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. that afternoon, just 4 hours earlier. The setting was unmistakably the guest bedroom upstairs, the same room where Victor had been staying all weekend. For about 10 seconds, the camera showed an empty room. Then Victor entered the frame, followed immediately by Marissa. They were talking quietly, but the audio was clear enough to hear Victor saying, "Are you sure no one will come looking for us?" "Caleb's busy with his computer stuff," Marissa replied. "He won't even notice we're gone." What happened next left no room for interpretation or denial. My girlfriend and my uncle, in the bedroom of my family's cabin, during our Thanksgiving gathering, betraying every bond of trust and respect that should have protected all of us from this moment. The dining room went completely silent except for the audio from the TV. My teenage cousin dropped his fork, and it clattered against his plate like a gunshot. My Aunt Sarah gasped and covered her mouth. My dad's face went pale, then red, then pale again. "Turn it off," Victor said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Turn it off," Marissa screamed, jumping up from her chair so fast she knocked over her wine glass. Red Cabernet spread across the white tablecloth like a bloodstain, but I didn't turn it off. I let the video play for another 30 seconds, long enough for everyone to understand exactly what they were seeing, long enough for the reality to sink in completely. Then I paused it and turned to face the table. "I installed those cameras for security," I said calmly, "to protect our family property from trespassers. I never imagined I'd need protection from family members themselves." Victor finally found his voice. "Caleb, this isn't what it looks like. We were just what?" I interrupted. "Just what, Uncle Victor? Because what it looks like is my girlfriend and my father's brother having sex in my family's cabin during our Thanksgiving dinner weekend." Marissa was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Baby, please let me explain. This was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything. A mistake? I repeated. You called it a mistake when you told him I wouldn't notice you were gone? When you were comfortable enough with each other to joke about deceiving me? My dad stood up from his chair, his hands shaking with anger. Victor, get out of my sight. Get out of this cabin. Now. Dawn, please, let's talk about this like adults, Victor began. Adults? My mom said, her voice ice cold. Adults don't betray their nephew's trust. Adults don't disrespect their family's home. Get your things and leave. Victor looked around the table, searching for an ally, someone who might defend him, or suggest this was all a misunderstanding. But my Aunt Sarah was staring at her plate, unable to make eye contact. My cousins looked disgusted and embarrassed. Even the teenagers understood the magnitude of what had happened. This is between Caleb and Marissa, Victor said desperately. This has nothing to do with the rest of you. It has everything to do with us, my dad replied. This is our family. This is our home, and you violated both. Marissa tried a different approach, walking around the table toward me with her arms outstretched. Caleb, I love you. I love you so much. This was just physical. It didn't mean anything. We can work through this. I stepped back from her. Work through this? Marissa, you betrayed me with my uncle in my family's cabin during Thanksgiving weekend. You looked me in the eye for hours afterward and acted like nothing happened. What exactly do you think we're going to work through? She collapsed back into her chair, sobbing harder. Victor grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair and headed for the door without another word. We heard his BMW start up 5 minutes later, the engine roaring as he accelerated too fast down the gravel road. Marissa stayed in the cabin that night, sleeping on the living room couch while I took the master bedroom. She kept trying to talk to me, knocking on the door around midnight, then again at 3 a.m., whispering apologies through the wood and begging for just 5 minutes to explain. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to explain. Sunday morning, December 1st, I found her in the kitchen at 6 a.m., fully dressed and holding a cup of coffee with shaking hands. Her face was puffy from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept at all. I'm driving back to Denver this morning, she said without looking at me. But I need you to know that what happened with Victor was the biggest mistake of my life. I love you, Caleb. I've never loved anyone the way I love you. If that were true, I replied, pouring myself coffee from the pot she'd made, yesterday wouldn't have happened. He pursued me, she said, desperation creeping into her voice. From the moment we arrived, he was flirting, making offers about jobs, telling me how talented I was. I was flattered by the attention from someone so successful. So you slept with him? She winced like I'd slapped her. It happened once before this weekend. In October, when you were working late and I met him for drinks to discuss that marketing opportunity. He took me to dinner at this expensive place in Lodo, and afterward, she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. So yesterday wasn't a moment of weakness, I said. It was a pattern. I was going to end it. I swear to you I was going to tell him this weekend that it couldn't happen again. But then we were alone in his room, and he said you'd never be able to give me the kind of life he could provide. And I just... Stop. I held up my hand. I don't want to hear any more. She started crying again. Please, Caleb. I'll do anything to fix this. I'll quit my job, we can move somewhere new, start over. I'll prove to you that you're the only man I want. The only man you want now that your other option has been eliminated. I corrected. Marissa, you didn't choose me over Victor. You got caught. My parents came downstairs around 7:30, and the look on their faces made it clear they'd heard Marissa's confession. My mom, who'd been polite but distant to Marissa all weekend, now couldn't even make eye contact with her. I think it's time for you to leave, dear, my mom said quietly. Marissa gathered her things and loaded her Honda Accord in complete silence. Before getting in the car, she tried one last time. Caleb, this doesn't have to be the end of us. People work through infidelity all the time. We can get counseling, figure out why this happened, make sure it never happens again. I already know why it happened, I replied. You're not the person I thought you were. She drove away at 8:15 a.m. and I never saw her again. The rest of Sunday, my family and I cleaned up from the weekend and talked about what had happened. My dad called Victor twice, but both calls went to voicemail. My Aunt Sarah, Victor's sister, was mortified and kept apologizing for his behavior, as if she were somehow responsible. You handled that perfectly, my dad told me as we loaded the last of the dishes into the dishwasher. You could have confronted them privately. Let them sneak around behind your back for months. Instead, you made sure the whole family knew exactly who they were dealing with. I just wanted the truth to come out, I said. Well, it did. And now everyone knows what kind of man Victor really is, and what kind of woman Marissa was. Over the following weeks, the fallout continued. Victor called me once, 3 days after Thanksgiving, trying to apologize and suggesting we handle this like men. I hung up on him. He sent a long text message the next week claiming he'd been drinking too much and that Marissa had seduced him. I blocked his number. Marissa tried reaching out through mutual friends, through social media, even showing up at my apartment complex one evening in December. Each time my response was the same. We had nothing to discuss. The best part wasn't their desperation or their attempts to shift blame. The best part was discovering how strong I was without them. For 16 months I'd been planning a future that included Marissa, talking about marriage, about buying a house together, about bringing kids to the cabin someday. When that future disappeared, I expected to feel lost or devastated. Instead, I felt liberated. In February 2025, I got a promotion at work. Senior maintenance supervisor with a $14,000 raise and oversight of 3 properties instead of 1. I started dating again in April, meeting a woman named Jessica at a hiking group who appreciated my dedication to family and my attention to detail. She's never met Victor and never will, but she loves the cabin and understands why it means so much to me. Victor's restaurant business hit some rough patches in the spring. Word travels fast in the Colorado restaurant scene, and apparently his reputation for unprofessional behavior started affecting his partnerships. I heard through my Aunt Sarah that he'd sold 2 of his 3 locations and was considering moving to Arizona. As for Marissa, she left her job at the fitness studio in March 2025 and moved back to her hometown in Ohio. According to her LinkedIn, which I checked exactly once out of curiosity, she's working at her father's insurance office and appears to be single. The cabin remains the center of our family's life. This past July, we had our annual 4th of July gathering. The same crowd minus Victor, plus Jessica and a few new faces. During the evening, as we sat around the fire pit sharing stories, my teenage cousin brought up the previous Thanksgiving. "That was the most epic family drama I've ever witnessed," he said. "Uncle Caleb just calmly destroyed 2 people without raising his voice or throwing a punch." "I didn't destroy anyone," I corrected him. "I just showed everyone the truth. They destroyed themselves." And that's the lesson I want people to understand from this story. Revenge isn't about getting even or causing pain. Real revenge is about exposing the truth and letting people face the natural consequences of their choices. Victor and Marissa thought they could deceive me and disrespect my family without repercussions. They were wrong. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply turn on the lights and let everyone see what's really happening in the shadows. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.